Chapter 1. Causes of Failure. Kevin Stillwell was driving through the Great Smoky Mountains, enjoying the splendor of nature and the autumn hues that forewarned the arrival of winter. The windows were down, letting in the crisp air and gentle breeze. This trip was the perfect antidote to the tense, claustrophobic meeting in Nashville yesterday, giving him a chance to recuperate before his next set of meetings in Durham, North Carolina. Earlier in his life, he might have roared through this countryside on a powerful motorcycle, barely noticing as it rushed by. But now in his late 30s, he was beginning to appreciate the natural world more and more. He had picked up this blissfully quiet electric rental car at Nashville Airport, and now driving in near silence, he felt like he was effortlessly gliding through clouds. He used the trackpad to select some music, and the sweet romantic melodies of Edith Piaf's La Vie en Rose filled the air. This reminded him of Natasha, his beloved wife, who he had met during a conference trip in California 3 years earlier. Natasha was a beautiful and keenly intelligent nurse, about 5 years younger than him, who worked at a local hospital and was running a publicity stall at the conference as part of the hospital's most recent funding drive. He had wandered over, and they struck up a conversation, hitting it off immediately. Fast forward 3 years, and Mrs. Natasha Stillwell was now 3 months pregnant with their first child. She never complained about his consultancy work, even though it often took him away from home, and he never wavered in his support for her. Kevin cherished every moment with Natasha, fully aware of the significance of their time together. An hour or so later, the GPS broke into his thoughts, announcing in a soft yet mechanically clipped voice that his destination was just up ahead. It was time to run through his schedule one last time. Today, he was meeting Dr. Michael Welsh, CEO of ChemCorp, a rather dull name for a well-known chemical company specializing in polymer science and manufacturing. ChemCorp had established a strong foothold in the industrial chemicals sector, catering to the automotive, electronics, and construction industries. During a briefing on Zoom a few days earlier, Dr. Welsh had confessed that ChemCorp was facing some challenges, including several years with near zero growth in revenue and declining profit, apparently due to intense competition from the APAC region. A strategic response was required. The board had agreed to intensify the company's R&D activities, and they wanted to regain their competitive edge by focusing on innovation. This was why Kevin was now involved. It was his area of expertise. Dr. Welsh had shared glimpses of the R&D projects, emphasizing the breakthroughs and scientific milestones that had been achieved. He proudly referred to the publication of groundbreaking research in prestigious journals, highlighting the expertise of his team and the cutting-edge advances they had achieved. And yet, the company was not converting these achievements into profit. Dr. Welsh said he was under pressure to explain why and to do something about it. Kevin had encountered this situation many times as a consultant, with clients all over the world essentially battling against the same set of problems. He sought to put Dr. Welsh at ease. Kevin was a naturally charismatic and charming man, and he was soon on first-name terms with the CEO. Michael, it looks like you have a mix of commercial and non-commercial innovation projects. We should inventory these projects and categorize them, which will help us see why they're not getting to the market and generating profits for you. Michael's face had creased into a frown, although Zoom meetings using a small laptop screen made it difficult to interpret facial expressions. Indeed, that was one of the reasons Kevin had requested this follow-up meeting in person. If you're not familiar with the difference between these concepts, think of it like comparing a show horse and a racehorse, Kevin explained. Both horses have unique qualities, but they're intended for different purposes. You have to categorize the horses to ensure you train them properly and get the best performance, and the same applies to your projects. The pennies still had not dropped, so Kevin continued. You wouldn't enter a show horse in the Grand National because it looks good but can't run. Similarly, a racehorse won't necessarily win a beauty contest. Each horse has its own merits, and it's essential to recognize this by assigning them to the correct category. Otherwise, you're not going to win any races or any shows. After a long pause, realization dawned, and Michael cracked a smile, which suited him better. Got it, he said. So you're saying our innovation might not be working because we're failing to play to our strengths? Okay, I see where this is going now. Maybe Thierry was right about you after all. I think it's fair to say you came very highly recommended. I phoned around. Glad to be of service, Kevin had replied modestly, while quietly thanking his longtime friend and client, Thierry McAllister, who had generated this lead for him. The rest of the conversation revolved around arranging today's meeting, and what initially seemed to Michael like a strange request. Kevin had asked to meet at a golf club rather than the company headquarters, but specifically at one where Michael was not familiar with the course. Michael sounded skeptical, but had agreed when Kevin explained that it was an important part of the strategy he was going to recommend. And now the club was rolling up on his left, accompanied by more mechanical chirruping from the GPS. Kevin made the turn, parked in a guest bay, and spotted Michael coming down the steps to meet him. Kevin was 5 minutes early and Michael was already there, so he could already confirm that Michael was punctual, which was an admirable quality. Michael's physical appearance was not a complete surprise to Kevin because they had already met virtually, and Kevin had also studied Michael's online profiles as a way to get to know his client. Michael's thinning dark brown hair had streaks of gray, and his piercing blue eyes stared out from a rather pale face. However, Michael was a bit taller than Kevin had anticipated. As they shook hands warmly, Kevin wondered if Michael had any preconceptions about his newly hired consultant that were now also being confirmed or denied. "I've got to say," Michael began, "that I've only been here once or twice before. It's a long way out of the city, so I can't really vouch for the facilities like I would at my normal club. Why was it important to meet here? You said it was part of your recommendations." Kevin's plan was to observe Michael's golf skills to gain an insight into his style and mindset, serving as a window into his character. It was important to have an unfamiliar course because it would show how Michael dealt with unexpected problems. However, he also found golf a good allegory for the process of innovation, and he said as much to Michael as they collected their clubs. Meeting over a game of golf was an ideal icebreaker because it was a mix of exercise, strategic thinking, and socializing, but it was also useful for decision-making. They talked for a while about their respective games, and Kevin found Michael to be amicable and easy to talk to, unlike many CEOs he had encountered in his career. However, beneath the friendly demeanor, Kevin could sense Michael's underlying anxiety. As they teed off for the first hole, Kevin explained the link between golf and innovation in more detail. The idea is to get the ball into the hole, which is analogous to getting an innovation to market. How this is achieved depends on the course, the player, and the clubs that are selected, which are analogous to the market, the company, and the innovation strategy. The clubs control the ball's distance and height, so appropriate clubs are needed to achieve the best score. Clubs with higher numbers achieve more loft, allowing the ball to travel higher but for shorter distances, whereas clubs with lower numbers achieve the opposite. Club selection therefore plays a major role in success. The course plan at the start of each hole shows the layout, distances, and the position of the green and obstacles such as bunkers or water hazards. They allow players to strategize their shots and optimize their approach to the flag. Similarly, knowing the market and any obstacles en route and having the right tools makes it easier to achieve successful innovation. Kevin observed how Michael examined the course map carefully, planning his shots rationally and using the most appropriate clubs for the required distance. But as they approached the second tee, Kevin threw his towel over the course plan so Michael was unable to rely on it. Michael was forced to play without seeing the position of the green, which was over the crest of a hill. Michael chose a driving club with a long range, and although his shot was solid and well executed, there was no way of knowing if he was aiming in exactly the right direction because the upslope and curve of the fairway obscured the green. As they ascended the slope, they found that the course banked sharply to the right. Michael's shot was way off and his ball was lost in the long grass. "Makes all the difference, doesn't it?" Kevin said, "when you can't see the overall plan and have to guess where the green is." At the third hole, the flag was visible from the tee, and Michael was able to make his shot without looking at the plan. Kevin, who was quite a talented player, landed his ball not far from the flag, but Michael's was even nearer. On the green, Michael was able to put his ball in a single stroke, giving him a well-deserved eagle. In contrast, Kevin deliberately chose the worst possible club to make his shot and needed 3 attempts to sink the ball. This was again a deliberate ploy in order to make a further point. It doesn't matter how easy the market is. And even if you have the best tools and all the advantages of a good position, you still have to select the right tools to finally put the ball. After 2 more fairly straightforward holes, the 6th fairway featured a particularly awkward bunker. Having fallen foul of this hazard, Michael took 4 increasingly frustrated attempts to chip his ball back onto the grass, and rather grumpily conceded defeat as Kevin's ball sailed past him. Kevin began to sense that Michael was also becoming more anxious, and on the 6th green, Michael finally became comfortable enough in Kevin's presence to admit why. The board had given him just 6 months to turn the company around, so he needed to act urgently. They probably also wouldn't be too pleased to see me wasting time playing golf, he said. Then, with a slightly raised eyebrow, he added, especially with someone who uses a sand wedge as a putter. Kevin took this as his cue to explain why he had requested this meeting venue. He said, Michael, you know golf and its rules very well, so we can use it as an analogy to summarize what's wrong with your innovation and commercialization processes. Kevin picked up his ball and held it up to Michael, between his thumb and index finger. Imagine this ball is your innovation project. The green is your market, where the ball needs to land with minimal effort. Putting the ball is a profitable sale, and failing to do so means no sale, so no profit in the organization. The clubs with different numbers are the technologies and methods you have in your hands. Using the best club for each shot and coordinating between different parts of your body is your team's know-how and experience in the organization. What you've learned during the first 3 holes is that you're more successful when you have an overall view of your green, your market. So you can push the organization to bring the ball, your project, with fewer shots, your resources, to the market. You also learned that you can be on the green, in the right market. But if you can't put the ball, commercialize the technology, you cannot win the game. I want you to keep that analogy in mind and start analyzing your initiatives to see if some are not seeing the green and others are on the green but cannot reach the hole. Kevin then pointed back up the fairway. Also, you got stuck in that bunker despite having all the right tools at your disposal. What you lacked in that particular case was experience and practice dealing with this specific hazard, which is why I wanted to bring you to an unfamiliar club in the first place. Some aspects of innovation cannot be taught and can only be learned through experience. Kevin strode off, leaving Michael trying to digest the information he had just received. Eventually, he caught up. I like the fact that you're trying to make this easier for me by drawing parallels between innovation and an everyday activity that I'm familiar with. It's actually quite a good way of doing it. Although I think you can stop using the sand wedge on the green now. You've made your point. Kevin laughed. Yes, but you won't ever forget this game. And that's why you'll always remember the analogies I've now tied to it. Plus, I've got 1,000 other tricks like this, which work just as well, and the day has only just begun. Look, let's skip to the last hole and then we can go back to the office and discuss things further. Michael had already begun to suspect that this was going to be another lesson, and he was not wrong. The 18th hole was the hardest, and both of them struggled with their shots despite studying the plan and selecting their best clubs. Okay, this is the last golf-related lesson of the day, I promise, Kevin said. This was the most difficult hole. We both played well, and we had the advantage of knowing the layout and having access to the best available equipment. Why were our scores so low? Michael thought briefly, and the answer came to him. Sometimes the course is just too difficult, he said. It's not our fault. We can't blame the equipment either. The course is just what it is. Kevin was impressed. Exactly, he said. So, what is the link to innovation? Michael thought for longer this time, and Kevin considered giving some additional hints, but in the end it was unnecessary. Light dawned in Michael's eyes. It doesn't matter how good an innovation project is, or even if you have the perfect team doing perfect work. Sometimes the objectives are just too difficult, and we don't have the resources or skills we need for success. Yes, Kevin agreed, but it goes even further than that. Being ambitious and visionary is excellent. Visionary companies create a market where there was initially no demand or need. They develop technology that, once available, creates the need. The internet, mobile communication, cryptocurrencies, and the metaverse are all examples of this concept. Originally, nobody needed a mobile device, but the technology was developed and the market was built around it, turning the mobile phone into a necessity. This is like making a golf shot and building the green wherever your ball lands. These strategies can achieve radical commercial innovation, as long as they are executed deliberately with adequate resources. However, we need to be cautious about using examples like that to justify projects when you might lack the resources to complete them. It's important to align your projects with the available resources and skill set. Michael seemed somewhat relieved as they returned their equipment and headed back to the parking lot. The trip back to ChemCorp took 45 minutes, even with light traffic in the city, and Kevin followed Michael rather than using the GPS. In Michael's office, the two men started looking through the ChemCorp innovation projects in more detail, with Michael thinking carefully about the lessons from their earlier round of golf, and specifically about the distinction between commercial and non-commercial innovation. Above all, He wanted to determine what was hindering the success of each project. Did they lack market knowledge? Did they struggle to commercialize new products? Did they lack the processes, technologies, and experienced personnel? Had they taken on overly ambitious projects without the necessary resources to complete and commercialize them? Or perhaps it was a combination of these factors. There was a knock at the door, and Janice, Michael's secretary, came in. Sorry for disturbing you, but Catherine Culver has arrived. I've shown her into meeting room B. Michael somehow managed to look surprised, terrified, and guilty all at the same time, and Kevin surmised that Catherine Culver was probably a member of the board that Michael had mentioned earlier, making an unannounced and unwelcome appearance. Okay, thanks, Janice. Please tell her I'll be there in a few minutes. After a pause, he added, and under no circumstances let her know that I was at the golf club all morning. Janice nodded and closed the door. Michael looked at Kevin apologetically. I can't keep her waiting. Make yourself at home and I'll be back as soon as I can. As Michael hurried out, Kevin watched his slightly stooped back and wondered what sort of trouble was brewing at ChemCorp. Dear reader, although the scenarios and conversations in this book are fictional, some of them are based on real experiences. Of course, I have altered them to the extent necessary to ensure they do not break any confidentiality agreements. I am sure that as you follow Kevin over the next 9 chapters, his story will remind you of situations you have encountered in your own career. If you have any stories you would like to share, I will collect them and, again with the necessary degree of alteration to ensure confidentiality. Perhaps one day we can join Kevin again in a sequel. To help you recall some real-life examples, here are some prompts to consider when analyzing your own organization's innovation projects. 1. Market needs. Identification and positioning issues. Have you encountered situations where you were unable to get the ball to the green because you either didn't see the market need or didn't consider it? Have you played good shots without being sure if they would get you closer to the green? 2. Lack of commercial focus and product finalization. Have you found yourself on the green but struggled to finish the round? Did you face challenges in fully commercializing your technology or product due to a lack of focus? 3. Technology process issues. Are there any defective or obsolete clubs in your organization or project? Are there tools, processes, or technologies that don't allow you to get the best out of each shot? 4. Team and experience issues. Have you encountered situations where you lacked the necessary experience and coordination? Did you find it challenging to navigate difficult situations, akin to being stuck in a bunker? 5. The wrong selection of projects based on available resources. Have you ever been on the wrong course? Have you faced projects that were too difficult for your available resources, requiring an unreasonable amount of time and effort to complete? Please send any real examples you have encountered in your career to bezad.madavi@inov2grow.com. I will keep them confidential, and a fictionalized version, along with an acknowledgement if you wish, will appear in the next book.